Americans.
You might be wondering, why in the world is there a 30-minute countdown before the show starts? Well, we actually start live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, so this whole 30-minute countdown is a chance for YouTube and Rumble to send out their alerts and notifications, so we encourage you to gather up and hang out with everyone in the chat room. So every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time is when we do this show live. You can join us for the countdown if you like, or just set your clock and reminder that at 4 p.m. Eastern is when we go live. You can also make sure you subscribe and turn on that bell notification, so hopefully you will get a notification.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to...
Who are shouting, just a moment.
I'm not defending him in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planning information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation data we want across which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plant in the New Yorker magazine had to do with supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields. And we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding this information? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi or agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
Colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organisation should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
we become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Hey everyone, just as a reminder, our show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just a few minutes from now, but I should remind you that we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natalie and I work very hard on it every morning over our cup of coffee, putting the stories together that we think are important that the mainstream media is going to ignore. All you need to do is go to our website. It's just redacted.inc. Put in your email address. We won't ever sell your email to anybody. And then you'll receive a welcome email. And all you need to do is verify that email, and 7 a.m. Eastern Time is when we send out our daily newsletter. And it's about 5 or 10 minutes in length that you can read it over your cup of coffee. And like I said, we cover 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus a couple of things you might have missed while you were sleeping. We try to have some fun with it, add a little humor into it. And again, it's a great way to start off your morning. But it's also a great way for us to stay connected with you as well, because we've been banned and blocked on some of these platforms before, where we haven't been allowed to post anything, not even a community post. So the only way for us to stay connected with you is through our newsletter. We were able to send out a newsletter and say, hey everyone, we're blocked for the next week, and let you know what was actually going on with our show. Anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up for the free newsletter, and it'll be posted first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee.
This is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CI director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire We had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth, and that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I was
you've
still
already
in
done.
Parliament, I...
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean with the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped. Yes, sir. At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the majors. The majors' assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone. Or to take the nation to war partway. Or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip. Because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me and he said, sir, you got to come in and talk to me a sec. He says, we've made the decision we're going to war with Iraq. I said, we're going to war with Iraq? Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Hey everyone, Clayton here. The show is going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I should remind you that we have a VIP community. It's our Redacted Rebel VIP community. Now, this show is totally free, what you're watching right now, right? You can subscribe here on YouTube and Rumble, totally free. But if you'd like to support independent journalism, we are run by you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We wouldn't be able to hire the team that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the servers that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the reporters that we have, the team that we have. So you can support us by going to redacted.inc, and on the right side of your screen, you'll see a VIP community button. Just click that, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us. We put out exclusive content, early interviews that no one else will see, live streams just for our VIP Rebel community. So again, it's totally free to watch this show. But if you do want to support independent journalism, we would really appreciate it. Come on over to redacted.inc, click on that community button, and decide if you want to sign up or not. It's totally up to you. We thank you. And meanwhile, the show will start in just a few moments at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome, everybody, to Redacted. We are not Facebook or Instagram, so we're actually up and running tonight. The rest of the internet is collapsed. Hey, everyone, I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
Good to see all of you guys. Welcome in. It's 4 p.m. Eastern Time. It is Super Tuesday. What a crazy day it is. Oh, my gosh. We've got a lot of things to talk about here. We're going to talk about Elon Musk's tweet saying this is worse than 9/11, the 9/11 terror attacks on the United States. What's happening at the U.S. southern border right now is an absolute disaster, and new revelations about what the Biden administration has been doing secretly, and they don't want to tell you the information about this. And the only reason we know about it is, of course, litigation. Once again, documents released during litigation.
Yes. We litigate our values.
That's right.
When no matter what you think about the most litigious country in the world, it gets us someplace sometimes. We're also going to talk about these massive Texas wildfires. Also, Letitia James, the sworn enemy of Donald Trump, is going after the beef industry. Is this frivolous? Yes, it is. We're going to take a look at the lawsuit, and it might surprise you. It might not.
Yeah, we're also going to talk about this, a big paper that was published around COVID and the vaccines. And why mRNA vaccines? Well, we can't go into all the details here on YouTube, of course. We can't on Rumble. But, this scientific paper has been pulled. We'll tell you why. And we're going to have one of the authors of that paper on the show tonight to talk all about that. Plus, we'll talk about Victoria Nuland resigning. Can you believe that? The deep state is in panic mode. It's Super Tuesday. Is Nikki Haley officially done? What is going to happen tonight? All of that and more as Redacted starts right now. Warmonger, one of the most evil humans in the world, is out,
responsible
resigning.
For copious deaths in copious regions, war,
and coups,
destruction,
coup in Ukraine,
all of that stuff. So I wish her an unhappy retirement.
Yeah.
And perpetual yeast infection.
Perpetual yeast infection. That was a great band. I love that band in college. I used to love listening to Perpetual Yeast Infection in college. It was great. It was really fantastic. They were a one-hit wonder, though, by the way. The other thing about, the Bass is now taken over for her temporarily. So now Bass, John Bass, famous for, of course, his brilliant Afghanistan withdrawal.
Oh.
He was literally the guy in charge of the Afghanistan withdrawal. He's taking over for Victoria Nuland. And so that really should give you an idea about what's going to happen in Ukraine. If the guy who's responsible for the failed Afghanistan withdrawal is now in charge of the show, running the deep state in Ukraine. That's where Ukraine stands on the importance meter tonight in the United States.
Right. So we have a lot of
maybe
news.
That's just a.
Oh, please.
I was going to say maybe that's an indicator that he's going to bumble us out of all these wars that we bumbled ourselves into.
Yeah, I mean, if he didn't get us into the war, we can forgive him for bumbling us out, right? Like, bumble us out of more.
Well, wait a second. With Ukraine, it's like, but there are no Americans in Ukraine, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Know what I mean? There's no Americans in Ukraine. There's no American equipment in Ukraine, right? So what do you have to worry about if we leave it all behind like we did in Afghanistan? Well, half of it's already blown up anyway. The Abrams tanks and everything else we've sent to Ukraine's already been blown up. So I guess there's nothing really left for them to bring out if they're going to bring it home. It's all destroyed.
We'll see.
Oh, boy.
So it's a busy day. We're going to talk about all of this new revelation about the U.S. flying immigrants into unknown airports from their home countries. We're also going to talk about the Texas wildfires. Also, I just want to warn you that the story that we do last about the COVID vaccine study that was retracted for political reasons, clearly, we're not going to do that on YouTube for obvious reasons. So I just want you to be prepared to join us where we go, where we can speak about that. So you have been amply warned. Before we talk about this immigration story or migrant story, however you'd like to call it.
Illegal aliens. That's what I like to say.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that's what Mayorkas doesn't want us to say. So I'm going to say exactly what he doesn't want us to say. So they are illegal immigrants. They are illegal aliens in the United States.
Okay. We'll talk about the semantics later. First, we want to tell you about our friends over at Bank on Yourself, because Wall Street wants you to put your money in an IRA or the 401k. You know why? Because then you're partnering with the government to invest in the stock market. But of course, they tell you max out your 401k and your IRA. But there is a better way to grow and protect your hard-earned money. The retirement plan alternative that's never had a losing year in over 160 years. That's Bank on Yourself. It's guaranteed predictable growth and retirement income. With Bank on Yourself, your plan never goes backwards when the markets tumble. Your principal and growth are locked in. So it's tax-free retirement. You know what your tax rate is when you retire, which is 0 under the current tax law. So take a look at what this might have to offer you for your retirement plan if you do not want to be dependent on the government, which you don't. I think we collectively agree on that. So go to bankonyourself.com/redacted and we'll send you a free report about the proven retirement plan alternative that banks don't want you to know. Again, that's bankonyourself.com/retirement.
Redacted.
Oh, sorry. Bankonyourself.com/redacted.
That's right. All right, let's talk about this. So Elon Musk warns this is worse than 9/11. The groundwork is being laid for something far worse than 9/11, he says. And those aren't my words. Those are the words of Elon Musk, who posted this article on X a few hours ago about the U.S. southern border. This administration is both importing voters and creating a national security threat from unvetted illegal immigrants, he writes. It's highly probable that the groundwork is being laid for something far worse than 9/11, just a matter of time. And the article, of course, from the Daily Mail that he tweeted about is this: Biden administration admits flying 320,000 migrants secretly into the United States to reduce the number of crossings at the border has national security vulnerabilities. So what exactly is going on here? Well, the Biden administration has been flying migrants around the United States. Now, we've covered this here on the show. It's just great that the Daily Mail is now covering it. We've been covering it with a lot of great journalists here on the show about how these secret flights have been happening, and they've been busted. They've been caught in a lot of cases. But there's a lot we still don't know about this. According to the Daily Mail, quote, Customs and Border Protection has refused to disclose information about a program last year secretly chartering flights for thousands of undocumented immigrants from foreign airports directly to U.S. cities. So this isn't even just like ferreting them around the United States. This is bringing them in, chartering them, giving them full passage right into the United States. It means that while record numbers of migrants were flowing over the southern border, I'm continuing to read from there, the Biden White House was also directly transporting them into the country. Why is this happening?
As in direct flights from their home airports.
It's unbelievable.
Free flights to the
United
States.
Free flights, like show up at this particular airport, we'll take great care of you, we'll bring you right into the United States. Why is this happening? Well, according to a lawsuit, go ahead, Dave.
Remember how long it is, but I was just reading that about 20 minutes ago.
Right. And so if you're someone who's ever migrated to a place like we have, you have to get background checks. You have to get fingerprints. You have to prove that you have never had any criminal record, or else the place that you're going normally can say, no, thank you to you. So those of us who've been through that process, it's like a slap in the face. Why did we do that?
Yeah. And so why exactly is this happening? Well, according to the lawsuits, the flights were part of the CBP One app, the Customs and Border Protection One app. They created an app which allows migrants to seek asylum with the app from their home country. So what the hell is the CBP One app? Well, here it is. This is your tax dollars were used to create this, the CB One app. Now take a look at this. Here's how the app works. It is on October 28th, 2020. They rolled out this app. It is a mobile application that serves as a single portal to a variety of CBP services through a series of guided questions. The app directs each type of user to the appropriate services based on their needs. As part of the program, they then can gain accessibility and advanced submission points and scheduling for your different border arrival, port of entry information, where you're coming into the United States. All of it can be done right through the app. This is your tax dollars being used to create this app, to create a mobile app that allows illegal aliens to make it easier to invade the United States. That's what this app is. It's unbelievable. Bricksuit tweets this. 1,500 illegal aliens per day are granted entry via this app. And they're not counted in the figures that Customs and Border Patrol release for border encounters. You know, when they say they have these encounters at the border. So these are not counted in that data.
So what was the data? David, you usually know these numbers right off the top. So what they were saying this year was how many, just this, not to put you on the spot, but we already know there's been a certain...
This year?
Yeah, that we know at the southern border.
300 and some odd thousand came in via this method.
So let's
and then it's like, it's almost 10 million over the border.
Over this year.
Now that's even a conservative number.
Yeah. Okay.
10 million.
Yeah.
I've seen estimates now where it could be as high as 30 million. 30 million, according to some reports. The 10 million is like a very conservative number. Think about that for a second.
10 million is probably only those that are like officially processed.
Exactly.
So we have people that are coming, like, you know, sneaking in that are not officially processed from even Canadian border. I mean,
all the time.
Who knows what the number is?
And being flown in and not being processed as part of the official numbers. So they're not a part of the official numbers. So what was previously unknown was that the administration was providing direct flights to app users from over 43 different countries. We didn't know this. Officials have refused to provide any details of who was flown in, and by the way, to where, to what city. Like, I would love for reporters to ask Karine Jean-Pierre in the White House press briefing room, this story has now emerged. Where are these illegal immigrants being ferried by Customs and Border Protection flights, chartered flights? Where? To what cities? And we're working on that part of the story here on Redacted. So we are working on that. We should have an update tomorrow on that part of the story. According to Colin Rugg, who just posted this on X, though, it gets even worse. Quote, the program at the center of the FOIA litigation is perhaps the most enigmatic and least known of the Biden administration's use of the CB1 app, the One Cell Phone scheduling app, even though it's responsible for almost invisibly importing by air 320,000 aliens with no legal right to enter the United States since it got underway in late 2022. And this is according to journalist Todd Bensman. Quote, under these legally dubious parole programs, aliens who cannot legally enter the country use the CBP1 app to apply for travel authorization and temporary humanitarian release from those airports. The parole program allows for 1 to 2 year periods of legal status during which adults are eligible for work authorization, which is what David was just talking about. So they get legal status for 2 years. God knows, and we don't know where they're going. And they're supposed to show up for some sort of a court date years from now to be processed? Give me a break. No one knows where they are. Meanwhile, in Texas, a new bill would allow law enforcement to arrest and expel migrants, but the Supreme Court, of course, has blocked that until at least next week when the court will take up that case. But let's go back to what Elon said, because I think it's really important. This is far worse than 9/11, he said. That false flag event was designed, of course, 9/11 was designed with the help of the CIA to take us into an endless war on terror. We know that. Take away our freedoms with the Patriot Act, create the largest expansion of the military-industrial complex in our nation's history, destabilize the Middle East to help Israel. And of course, all of that was planned years in advance. And all of that we know documented well. Read the writings of Dick Cheney, Paul Wolfowitz. It's all there. All of that was well documented at the time, and I point you to my extensive interviews on that piece of it, on the subject of the controlled demolition of the towers, the Twin Towers, how those pilots couldn't have possibly flown those flights, deep dive interviews on that very subject here on the channel. So how could this be far worse than 9/11? Well, use your brain, because 9/11 was an invasion of other countries, right? Now we're watching an invasion right before our eyes that will destroy the United States and create a uniparty liberal government. This is what Colonel Douglas Macgregor just tweeted. He said, we need to secure our borders now. The southern border needs 70 to 80,000 troops there right now. We need to build the right barriers. We must change the way we do business, he writes. And he's absolutely right about that. It's worth remembering that the United States currently has U.S. forces protecting the border of South Korea from a North Korean invasion. We have U.S. troops right there on the parallel. U.S. currently has U.S. forces protecting Taiwan from an invasion of China. The U.S. has no troops on our southern border protecting our own country. And this is by design, by the way. Since the early 1800s, the United States had troops stationed at the southern border. In the year 1829, this guy, President Andrew Jackson, ordered troops to the southern border to protect trading and American citizens.
Oh, there's no video?
Yeah, we don't have video of Andrew Jackson.
Oh.
Do we have any video of Andrew Jackson? We don't.
I looked for some, but I couldn't sketch fast enough. So
of Old Hickory, Old Hickory hitting some people. Anyway, President Andrew Jackson ordered troops to the southern border to protect trading and American citizens from attacks and theft. Sound familiar? Oh, protect business? Protect Americans from what was happening at the border? It seems like a remarkable idea. The liberal media, not surprisingly, of course, made fun of Donald Trump for saying that Andrew Jackson was his favorite president. Recall this Salon article, Donald Trump's favorite president, Andrew Jackson, as a father of the white republic, it said in that Salon article. Father of the white republic. So thanks to President Jackson's moves, we had troops there in different roles, basically up until about World War II in some capacity. Then we needed soldiers to go fight Nazis in Europe. And now, of course, we are arming and teaming up with Nazis in Ukraine. So the times have certainly changed, haven't they? It's unbelievable what is going on right now. And there's certain things I can't even talk about here on YouTube as it relates to what's happening right now in this election and what's happening at the U.S. southern border. We put together a special report. I want you all to go and download it. It's totally free. It's a co-authored. You cannot get this on YouTube. We can't even talk about some of the stuff on here because they will block us for saying it. So go grab it. It's a free report that I put together that I've co-authored. Go to redacted.inc/illegal and download this thing. It's totally free. And it's a deliberate strategy to influence the 2024 elections. We've got some incredible guests coming up here this week, specifically on how this border crisis is election fraud, what it's actually doing to our country. Tomorrow, you don't want to miss one of our special guests on this topic who's written a book on the invasion of the United States. And one of the smartest individuals on this topic. We're going to have him on the show tomorrow. Very excited about that. But this is an absolute disaster. So, I mean, you guys throw it out there. You guys, what in the chat room think? Am I right about this? Worse than worse than 9/11? I mean, this is what Elon Musk is saying, that this is worse than 9/11. Am I wrong that it's just really focused on the invasion piece of this? It's an invasion of the United States, not an outward invasion of like Iraq, Afghanistan, and, of course, an expansion of the Patriot Act. And
I think what's missing from all of this is an economist telling us what are the things that will fall like dominoes because of this, right? Who are the people who will suffer the most? Usually it's the most poor, the most disenfranchised. Why and how is this going to affect everyday Americans and our economy?
David, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, basically at this point, you're looking at more people have come in than the population of like the 5 or 6 biggest cities in the United States, who are already short of resources, and they're prioritizing those limited resources to these immigrants right now. So it's like it's going to become a thing where people are fighting over resources because they're giving it to migrants. And so that's going to be, like we're seeing thefts and everything all over the country from people breaking in and taking things. I don't know how many of those are possibly illegals, but I mean, I just going to get crazy. It already is.
Someone in the chat says, Baron Saturday says it's not worse than 9/11, but it's really bad. I guess, if you're talking about hitting the banking infrastructure of the United States, right? Throwing us into a massive recession, collapsing an economy, killing 3,000 Americans, close to 3,000 Americans on that day, and not just Americans, people from other countries who were in the trade towers and so forth. But then think about 9/11. I guess if you think about it, though, because then it expanded to killing over 1 million people in Iraq. Right. Like 9/11 was an extension to go and kill 1 million Iraqis to destabilize Libya.
I think we've seen that the endless wars that resulted from 9/11, the numbers are 4.5 million. We saw that report come out of Yale, or I can't remember now. I can find it if you want.
I'm sure Victoria Nuland could answer that. Go ahead, Philip.
9/11 was a unifying event in the United States, where this is definitely a divisive event, and so there's also that to contend with. It's like this is something that's going to bring the nation together.
Well, and then I guess this could actually be worse in that it's creating a civil war, right? This will create a civil war in the United States, and this, men of military age who are coming into the United States, and for what purpose? This destabilizing event, this to create this uniparty, this uniparty liberal order in the United States is what they're trying to do. So we'll see. This is Super Tuesday, of course. We're going to be watching very closely today to see if at least, one of the neocons falls this afternoon. If Nikki Haley finally packs it in this afternoon. We know that she stopped ad spending yesterday. So there are those reports over the past few days that she's been pulling back on that. So we're going to get to more news here on your Tuesday. We're going to talk about these Texas wildfires because something very mysterious is going on with that. Why is it specifically hitting the Panhandle? And did President Biden let slip some information about exactly what's causing these, and maybe why it's okay for some and not for others? And what did Greg Abbott just say about the weirdness of the fires in Texas? We'll talk about that and its implications on the beef industry. We're also going to talk about Trump's biggest foe, Letitia James in New York, the lead prosecutor in New York, who's now going after the meat industry
in the Amazon.
What? Like, this is
She's
the target.
the Attorney General of New York litigating for the Amazon and Colorado. It's a very strange lawsuit. We're going to take a look at it and remind ourselves that beef is not your enemy.
No, it's your friend. Beef is your friend. But first, do you find yourself with a substantial amount of cash right now that you're not investing? Maybe, you're like Nancy Pelosi and you've made a lot of money in the stock market and you're just sitting on some cash. Or maybe you're like Victoria Nuland, who we learned, has made tens of millions of dollars. So sitting on all this extra cash right now, and you haven't invested it. You're not sure what to do. You see gold prices today hitting an all-time high. You saw Bitcoin hit an all-time high today as well. You're waiting to figure out where you can put your money. Well, if you invest, if you open an account with Moomoo, right now you can park that money and get 8.1% APY. That's right. So even if you're not investing it, it's like a savings account that you can park it. You have to know that 8.1 API is 17 times the national average of a savings account or an interest rate. And there's no minimum deposit limit for cash sweeps. This is one of the highest interest rates that I know of. And what I love about Moomoo is it stands out by offering zero commissions, no platform fees for stocks, options, ETFs. It's packed with powerful market analysis features, absolutely free. For example, now is the U.S. stock market earnings season. So financial data, analyst ratings, earnings calendar, and all more free to use inside the app. But the best part is you're going to get 15 free stocks when you sign up, in addition to this 8.1% API right now. So normally the account is 5.1. Right now, for a limited time, for 3 months, they're throwing an additional 3% just for parking your money there. So, if you've got extra cash and you're keeping your powder dry, as they say. Like, before I make investments, I bought a couple of different companies today. And I had that money sitting in the account waiting. And while it's sitting there, it's earning 8.1% API or 5.1 API if you've had the account for, open for a few months. So for new account holders, 8.1% APY. And if you've had the account open for, a few months now, you get 5.1% API, or earn up to $5,000 in cash rewards when you transfer assets over to Moomoo. So redacted.inc/Moomoo. Go there, sign up, get 15 free stocks today. All right. Well, something very strange is happening in Texas. Besides millions of illegal immigrants pouring across the border, which we just covered, the state is dealing with the largest fires in Texas state history. Right now, going on as we speak. Take a look.
As crews fight on, the largest fire in state history remains only 15% contained. The Smokehouse Creek fire torching more than 1 million acres, hundreds of homes, and leaving at least 2 people dead. While the cause remains under investigation.
Yeah, still under investigation. We still don't know. We still have no idea what's going on. And that accounts for a number of fires across Texas that we still have no idea, that are still under investigation 2 and 3 years later. So many years later, still under investigation. Really? Okay, some of them they've nailed down as accidental, but many of them are still wide open. We don't know what's causing these fires. Why, if something were to explode like a piece of equipment, it would blow outward? Why are things melted inward? Why are temperatures so stinking hot that street signs have melted? Aluminum has melted. Street signs and steel. What's going on here? People dying in their homes. They can't get out. Roads being closed because they can't escape. Many are asking why now, even during a snowstorm. I mean, this footage you're seeing here on your screen, it's snowing. This is overnight. Snow, wildfires in Texas. This is all happening, and it's hurting cattle ranchers the hardest. Those are the ones hit hard. Over 88% of all beef production comes from the Panhandle in Texas. These fires could forever change the beef industry in the United States. And Governor Abbott, I thought this was really stunning, says that these fires are he's seen a lot of natural disasters. As governor, you see them. You see fires, you see hurricanes, you see everything. He says this is unlike anything he's ever seen before.
I have witnessed and observed some extraordinary damage in our state. It could be caused by hurricanes or tornadoes, and frequently when you see the aftermath of that damage, there's some semblance of a structure that is still there. When you look at the damages that have occurred here, it's just gone, completely gone. Nothing left but ashes on the ground.
So that's strange. Now, I just want to remind you all, so you know that we're being fair and honest here, that remember, Abbott is a member of the World Economic Forum. You can go to their website right now and see his smiling picture right there on the World Economic Forum's website, just as a reminder of what he is and what his history is. So this is all very odd. Locals are reporting aluminum street signs that are just melted down completely. Of course, aluminum melts at 660 degrees Celsius, which is about 1,220 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not uncommon. You know, there are fires, of course, house fires and so forth, that can get up to 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's not uncommon at all. But as ranchers are reporting, like, this is absolutely devastating to their herds, to their livestock, even with their eyes being burned out. Listen.
Oh. This is one little calf here. I don't know if he's going to be all right. His feet are burned really bad.
No.
A lot of them have been blinded by it. It burned their eyelashes, eyelids, everything, and just burned all the hair off of them. Their feet are coming off, their hooves, they're bloody. It burned their udders. And, you know, even if they survive it, more than likely they're going to get pneumonia, they're going to get sick, they're going to die. But we've already had to put some down. It's better than letting them suffer and just die. It's extremely hard to see them suffering. I mean, they're just, like I say, I've raised some of them since they were babies, you know. It's just hard.
More than 85% of cattle in the state are raised in the Panhandle, where the Fields Mailer Ranch is located. State officials called the impact to cattle and crops catastrophic.
Trees standing perfectly green besides demolished buildings. It's not normal. It's not natural. People, of course, drawing very strong comparisons to what happened in Maui, as you know, perhaps because we don't get answers from our government, and we start to look at comparisons here in the past year to what happened here. Total neighborhoods perfectly fine, yet adjacent to ones that aren't. Look at these satellite photos from these before and after images here of some of the Texas fires. Total neighborhoods just decimated, scorched to the ground, and with trees still standing. Multiple fires.
Are there anything
blue?
Anything blue survive?
Oh, you're reading my mind.
Painted the cattle blue?
Well, you have a lot of people, of course, who are saying, yeah, I wish I had my roof painted blue. And a lot of people in the chat room right now are saying DEWs, directed energy weapons. I mean, a lot of people, many of you are saying, well, no, these were solar. Well, someone was saying, no, not a directed energy weapon, solar issue. Okay. Well, we'll get there in a second. And I'm not saying it's one thing or another because we don't know. We don't have an official response yet. But I'm telling you what people are showing us and what people are saying. Multiple fires have struck dairies and meat processing plants in the Panhandle in the past year as well. So multiple fires in the same area.
Massive fire at a Texas dairy farm that killed 18,000 cows last Tuesday. Fire officials say a piece of equipment used at the farm is to blame.
It's like a broken record at this point because there's more, seems like every week. Listen.
Now, the fire did break out just before 5:30 this evening on Montdale Road in Scott Township. The meat packing plant was fully involved, and explosions were heard as flames took over the structure.
I've lost count, actually, how many meatpacking plants are out there. Food distributors and related business entities have burnt down in recent history. Thankfully,
last year was all the chickens and the eggs.
Yeah,
That was-
and what was first?
I know.
Get it? And the, I can't keep track of all these business entities and food distributors and meatpacking plants right now because, fortunately, there's a website literally devoted now to tracking all of these fires. Listen.
Another food processing plant fire happened yesterday in Montebello, California. California has experienced its share of devastating processing plant fires. Back in April, a massive fire at Salinas, California broke out in the key agricultural region where tens of thousands were forced to evacuate their homes.
Some internet sleuths are doing the heavy lifting for us, so we wanted to put this on the map on the screen from Z-Maps. This shows the alarming rates of fires at manufacturing plants, grocery stores, food pantries, farms, and grain factories. It's likely that over 100 of these fires have taken place just this year.
Okay.
So we have to literally track them now with a map because that's how many processing plant fires have taken place in the United States.
Well, I guess the relevant question is then give me the stats for previous years so that
Right.
maybe this is just food factories catch fire and they weren't being covered before.
Yeah, our cattle processing and meat processing plants every year, are we having over 100
Are they,
every
for
year?
whatever reason, prone to fires?
Right.
Do they never do stress testing? That's the relevant question because it seems it could be a media cycle or it could be real.
So President Biden, of course, raised a lot of eyebrows and raised my eyebrows, which are pretty big. I don't have Eugene Levy eyebrows, but I certainly was curious when he said this about the roofs of homes, and he's specifically talking about Texas and these wildfires. Listen.
Because if you fly over these areas that are burned to the ground, you'll see in the midst of 20 homes that are just totally destroyed, one home sitting there because it had the right roof on it. And anyway, since I took office, FEMA's provided Texas alone.
Oh.
It's like he knows he went off script for a moment, And
Yeah.
he looked over and then he went back to his teleprompter, So they had the right roofs on it. What roof is right for a fire? What roof is correct for a fire in Texas right now that could have prevented this? Well, a lot of people...
Blue roof, Alex?
Yeah, maybe a blue roof. In fact, people in the Panhandle, these are Google Trends results this afternoon from the Panhandle. These are people searching, who live in Texas. They're looking in their search term, directed energy weapons. Amarillo and El Paso area, surging search results for directed energy weapons. Energy is the topic, and directed energy weapons. And then, of course, they even search more deeply, and they're looking at blue roofs is one of their search terms as well. And blue, the color blue. Okay. And so you're seeing, and look at, and also I'm curious, Minnesota was on here as one of the top spots for these searches right now, which I found it very interesting. So keep your eye on Minnesota. Is something about to happen in Minnesota that why so many people are concerned about directed energy weapons in Minnesota? Did I miss something? Is there something happening in Minnesota that I should know about over the past 24 hours? I couldn't find anything, but they're certainly looking for it. Of course, many people have said directed energy weapons were to blame for this. Of course, I have no evidence of that. But is President Biden hinting at that when he said that these people's roofs were fine, or that, they had the right type of roof and that's why their house survived? So what exactly are they? Because a lot of people say, no, there's no such thing as DEWs. They don't exist. Well, yeah, they do. All you need to do is go to Northrop Grumman's own website. You read all about directed energy weapons that they've developed with the help of the Pentagon. The high energy laser solutions defending our nation at sea, on land, and in the air. It's Northrop Grumman's directed energy solutions, developed high energy laser solutions to defend our nation at sea, on land, and in the air. Join the Helldivers. USS Portland firing a successful attack. They have it right on their website back in 2021. The U.S. Navy even made a video about how these directed energy weapons work. Here's the USS Portland firing their test laser, successfully firing the solid test laser. And of course, people were sharing online the other night those videos, those images of the green lasers coming from outer space, saying, is this what they saw?
Freaking laser beam.
Literally shot a drone right out of the sky with a laser. Like, that's what's happening here. Mark Esper from the Pentagon was proud to talk about the directed energy weapons program and the funding that the Pentagon is providing for these programs. Listen.
Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, it's an honor to join you for this year's Air, Space, and Cyberspace Conference. Thanks to our largest research and development budget in the department's history, we are advancing critical technologies to maintain our military edge in areas such as hypersonic weapons, directed energy, and autonomous systems.
As G. Fontes in our Rumble chat says, conspiracy theory equals fact. Well, yeah, I mean, yes, directed energy weapons do exist. Were they used in this situation? Who's to say? Many people online are saying, well, clearly now that Texas has stood its ground against illegal immigration, is going to stop the flow of illegal migrants across the border and push back against what Democrats want, that this is a sticking it to them. So they're launching directed energy weapons. Again, I have no proof of that whatsoever. But when the president makes comments about a roof and they have the right types of roof, that certainly raises eyebrows. Go ahead, Dave.
What is the blue roof? Is that just because it refracts the laser?
Yeah, there's a TikTok you can see about this. It kind of explains this from last year after the Maui fires. David, you want to explain how the waveform pattern will just bounce off and not affect blue?
Well, yeah, so I saw a guy do a test, and he had a laser, and he was going across different swaths of cloth. He went red, yellow, orange, all these colors, and then went across the blue, and it would burn every one, except it would refract from the blue. Like, it didn't harm the blue at all.
Right.
So it's something about the blue color and the laser color, maybe. I don't know if it has to do with the laser color, but it just does not seem to affect the color blue.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the light pattern, right? So it's like why when you're standing on white paint at a pool, you're fine. Your feet aren't going to burn, right? Mm-hmm. The same when you're standing on black and it's absorbing. Sure. You're going to burn your feet off. I don't know, but this is why people have been painting their roofs blue.
Are they? Is that a thing?
The elite painting their houses. Like, if they're painting their houses, they're painting their roofs. Match the color.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Whatever Bill Gates has on his bunker, I'm going to do that too.
So Illuminated One in our chat says 666 hertz frequency is the indigo color. I see that. Yeah. I wonder. No, it's not the roofs are not. Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know what that was either. So Philip, thanks for asking the question.
Interesting.
I assumed it had something to do with reflecting the light waves. I wasn't exactly sure.
We weren't up on the meme.
It's a frequency, as Anthony Goodley says in our chat here. Says light is all about frequency, color is frequency, and you can watch these videos of them shining this laser, and it's literally burning holes in all of these other colored pattern swatches.
Yeah. But
when it gets to the blue, it doesn't. It just bounces off. Right. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It is crazy. Anyway. We'll be watching what happens in Texas, but 15% contained. They did get some better wind patterns this afternoon, so our thoughts are with the cattle ranchers. I mean, at the heart of this, forget the DEW weapons and all of that stuff for a second. At the heart of it is an entire industry, a beef industry, that's being upended, it seems like in many parts, intentionally right now, at least from a litigation perspective. We know they're going after the meat industry. We know that the World Economic Forum absolutely wants you to stop eating meat. They do not want you to do that. They're blaming, of course, you're eating meat on climate change. But by the way, before Biden made those comments about the roof, he did say that the reason we're seeing these wildfires is as a result of climate change. So again, you see the pattern here. They're coming after your meat.
Well, if I may, I'm going to poke a couple holes in this beef equals climate change as we talk about the Letitia James litigation about the meat industry. So Trump rival Letitia James, they call her Tish James.
Okay,
let me just take that again. So Trump rival Letitia James is going after the beef industry. She's the Attorney General of New York, and she's filed a lawsuit against JBS Foods, the world's largest beef producer based in Colorado, for what she calls misleading the public about its environmental impact. She says JBS has claimed that it will achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2040, despite documented plans to increase production and therefore increase its carbon footprint. So that's her big gotcha, is they said they were going to reduce greenhouse gas and they're not going to do it. So she's saying that this is a type of fraud called greenwashing, and she wants to punish the meat industry. Take a look at this. These are some things that she says that they said, which are misleading, that she is then suing them for. They said that agriculture can be part of the climate solution. Bacon, chicken wings, and steak with net zero emissions. It's possible. That's fraud? To say that they think that meat is a sustainable part of a future.
So she's labeling that as fraud in her case? That's unbelievable.
No, these are things that they said that she's calling fraudulent greenwashing.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Yeah.
So these are part of maybe their marketing or something they've said.
Right.
And she's calling this out. By the way, you can do this in England. You can go after companies, right? That's why you see no television ads in England that are like, makes you happier. Well, they can't say that, right? Because...
Okay, beyond just, though, that this is advertising, what they're doing is speaking on behalf of their industry. And I can prove to you that actually the meat industry has cut emissions and become more efficient in the United States alone. So I'm just curious if she didn't study the same things I did, because she's saying, we will cut our own emissions 30% in 2030 and eliminate Amazon deforestation from our supply chain within 5 years. Also that they're going to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions. So, okay, you better watch out if you say that you think chicken wings and bacon should be a part of the climate future, because you could get litigated against also. Also, a lot of companies are saying that they're going to be carbon neutral or setting these climate change targets and not hitting them. They're not getting litigated for that, though. They're answering to their shareholders. Just last week, we covered how Audi said that they would not go all electric for their fleet by 2026. Is that an environmental promise? A contract that we can now litigate because they're not doing that? If so, businesses had better watch out. Don't say boo about the environment unless you can prove it. But this would mean that the Attorney General has to prove that her claims about the meat industry are true. Here's from her press release about the litigation. She's saying industrial animal agriculture, however, has a substantial environmental footprint. Beef has the highest total greenhouse gas emissions of any major food commodity, and beef production is linked to large-scale deforestation, especially in the rainforest, which further drives climate change by releasing greenhouse gases and eliminating trees and plants that absorb and store carbon dioxide, known as carbon sinks. Okay, there are a lot of problems with this statement, and climate scientists know it. You would think that all of this can be presented in court. Here are a few. Beef production around the world, she points out, has a 14.5%. It accounts for 14.5% of annual global greenhouse emissions. That's true. But that is a global number. So you would think that in a less developed country as the United States, beef production probably would be much higher percentage of global greenhouse gas emissions per year. But in the United States, it is much lower. In fact, in the UK, beef production is only responsible for 4% annually. In the US, any guesses? Because guess what? In the US, we're pretty good at agriculture, at livestock agriculture. Any guesses what it is in the United States, boys?
2%.
You looked at my notes again.
I was going to say
she asked me at dinner. She asked me earlier today, and I got it correct at dinner. And she said, "You're right." So I wanted to.
You wanted credit.
I want to get credit, and I want to be right again twice in one day.
Oh, okay. It really impressed the kids that he did get that right. Yeah. In the United States, beef production is only responsible for 2% of the country's emissions. It's nowhere near 14.5%. That's a global average. So that 14.5% number that climate activists spread around about meat production, that's misleading, and they know it. And they know that if other countries emulate the United States agriculture, they can get their numbers down too by just learning and improving. So this is a chart from the EPA showing that beef emissions in the United States adds up to only about 2.2%. So that's crazy. Why don't they know that? Why is she litigating on this 14%? In the U.S., again, we just get more efficient every year. According to the beef industry, so yeah, consider the source, they say doing more with less has decreased U.S. beef emission intensity by 29% and total carbon emissions by 30% since 1975. So given that since 1975, the industry has already reduced by 30%, it's not that much more for this JLB company to say, yeah, we probably can do another 30% in the next decade, given how much we are able to improve efficiency. Now, the Attorney General says that this defendant is responsible for the destruction of the Amazon. Does she know that that's not in her purview? She's the Attorney General of New York.
But she's very concerned about the Amazon rainforest.
Right.
Which do you not realize that everything belongs to the United States?
Specifically New York?
All of it. Everything. Yeah.
And the Amazon. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Where's the litigation against the military-industrial complex? I mean, wouldn't that, is she suing them next?
No.
Right.
She's just concerned.
A little bit harder on the Amazon rainforest than meat.
That's a great point.
No, and why isn't she suing the Biden administration over illegal immigration, which her city is being crushed under right now? But this is her biggest concern.
Right. Well, maybe she believes that the Amazon are the lungs of the world because Greta Thunberg told everybody that. Here's what happened when climate journalist Michael Schellenberger asked the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change about that. Here he is talking to someone from that body, Dan Nepstead, when he said, are we actually dependent on the Amazon, like the whole world? Is it the lungs of the world? And that person said, it's bullshit. There's no science behind that. The Amazon produces a lot of oxygen, but it uses the same amount of oxygen through respiration. So it's a wash. You can read through this screen if you'd like to talk more about how, yeah, it's an ecosystem. It really does not do much for the state of New York. So somebody please update AG James on that matter. Another problem with this lawsuit is that it claims that greenhouse gas emissions result in total global warming and human-led climate change. We've been over this ad nauseum. Nobody has been able to prove that definitively. Human-led climate change has yet to be proven, even with IPCC United Nations models, where their entire job is to prove it, and they are trying to prove it. They still have not. Now, whenever I see these climate changers talking about meat, I have to wonder this: why don't they also target junk food? That's interesting, right? So this comes from the Great Plant-Based Con, a fantastic book that I do recommend. She talks about how in the UK, the average person's food emissions are about 6,000 grams of carbon dioxide per day, with the emissions generated by meat, fish, and eggs and dairy only marginally more than those generated by a combination of sugar, sweets, chocolate, cakes, desserts, soft drink, alcohol, rice, bread, pasta, cereal, and food waste. So you have to ask then why the narrative has been so skewed towards an insistence that we reduce or eliminate consumption of meat and animal source foods. An alternative narrative could easily be, and could still be, cut down on sweets, empty carbs, junk food, and food waste to save the planet. Some studies support this absolutely, with one concluding that in some parts of the world, the greatest reduction in per capita carbon footprint would be achieved by reducing the consumption of sweets and ultra-processed food alone. Another by an Anglo-Brazilian research team finding that the eating of processed junk food makes climate change worse. So given that sweets, carbs, and junk food are, obesogenic, and have little to no nutritional value, while animal source foods are in their real whole form nutrient rich, this would seem to make much more sense, right? And so, given that one is terrible for you, why don't we focus on that one? Why won't we go after those industries for their impact on the planet?
That would be nice.
Yeah. Anyone?
No, maybe we should go after the Beyond Meat Burger factory.
Well, they have been proven to have a terrible impact on the planet because of the monocrops and the high processing that comes from that. And also this study published just in January of 2024 shows that processed food, amongst which these, meat
fake meat
patty foods are associated with at least 32 damaging health outcomes.
Be interesting to look at,
including cancer, heart disease, anxiety, all-cause mortality. So why doesn't the AG go after those foods, which are neither good for the planet nor our bodies?
It'd be interesting. Have you seen like the McPlant? McDonald's has their. I don't know. Are they using
nothing to do with it?
Yeah, I would never touch that with a 10-foot pole. Actually, I would. I would touch it with a 10-foot pole. I'd have someone throw it up and I'd smack it.
Yeah.
But I would love to see like a McPlant versus like a quarter pounder with cheese. Like what impact it actually has, not from Letitia James's mouth, but what actual the meat production versus the McPlant.
Yeah. I was on a
breaking news.
Go ahead.
I have something coming in my ear here that we just moved up to number 2 on counterhate.com with this segment. So congratulations.
Oh. Okay.
Great. All right.
Did we really? Oh no.
No.
Okay.
Just like like you can't talk about this because we hate we're climate deniists.
Right. They call us new deniers when we talk about how these solutions are actually not that good. I was on a PTA chat at the school that my kids go to, and they were saying, well, for the welcome back picnic, should we separate the barbecues for the veggie burgers and the meat burgers? And they only asked vegetarians in the group, would you be upset if the veggie burgers were on the meat grills? And I rang in and I was like, I actually am a meat eater and I don't want the veggie burgers on the meat grill because those are full of seed oils. And nobody responded to me. Oh, they were like, we don't want you. We only want the vegetarians.
They're like, we don't want Natalie to respond to this.
Lunatic.
Yeah.
Who's this meat-eating lunatic in the PTA chat? Like, we only want vegetarians.
They hate me in the PTA for many reasons.
Love it.
You're like the female Ron Swanson. You're just from Parks and Rec.
Oh, okay. I don't know that character. I thought it was the Anchorman.
Oh, gotcha. No, where he doesn't eat vegetables because he doesn't eat the food that his food eats.
Okay.
So it's just
That's good. That is good. I don't think you can make a TV character like that in 2024. Like someone who's anti-vegetable.
Yeah.
Like you cannot.
Yeah, I didn't make any friends with that. Like keep seed oils off the actual meat, grill. So,
right.
Anyway, I don't have any friends anyway.
We were at that barbecue and one of the moms came over and she's like, oh, I haven't eaten yet. And she's like, are there any veggie burgers left? And I said something like, you wouldn't want that anyway. Or I just made up.
Yeah, and she was like, oh, my son eats those. And we're like, okay. We're not.
You do you.
We're not those kind of parents who are like, oh, you give your kids soda. We try really hard to just live and let live. But why only ask the vegetarians in the group? Doesn't my dietary preference also mean as much?
Right.
That's not egalitarian.
No, apparently not.
Apparently it doesn't.
It's part of your white rural rage.
I suppose. Okay, so
your personal gardening is ruining the world.
Right.
Yeah, right.
What does the Attorney General want with this lawsuit? Here it says she's asking the court to require this meat company to cease its net zero by 2040 advertising campaign. But what if they make it, right? Then what are you going to do? Like, could they countersue by 2040 and say we actually did this? She wants a third-party audit of its compliance with New York consumer protection statutes. And she wants all of this money, which she's calling ill-gotten gains. Like they sold you meat, you bought it. Did you buy it on a false premise? And then you should be compensated because you wouldn't otherwise have bought that meat. New York Post columnist Betsy McCaughey says that this lawsuit is frivolous. She says that AG James has used the power of her office to go after President Donald Trump and now is targeting big business. And this will scare businesses out of the state of New York when they can ill afford it. So what do you think? Is this frivolous? It would seem to me that it's so easy to disprove these things in court, but I'm not a lawyer for the beef industry. So let me know what you think.
Oh, my gosh. this is what the world has come to, because you know she's like giving up, I guess, on Trump right now while
they're litigating, or while they're appealing the ruling.
She,
right.
You know, what can I do? She's like, what can I do to really win the hearts and minds of liberals? I'll go after meat.
I'm just so confused that she would use these things that are easy to prove, like this 14.5% number. You should know that in the United States it's way less than that.
And because in court, this would come out. Like, if we get to that point and we go to a hearing, this is going to come out.
But sometimes a lawsuit is a way of bullying people because they have
Not sometimes,
to.
almost all the time.
Right. They have to respond. They have to get their lawyers involved. And so, let us know what you think. We're going to talk next about the COVID vaccine paper that was canceled. It was retracted from the publication just weeks after it was published. It was trolled. It was absolutely politicized, and it was attacked by Big Pharma. We're going to talk to one of the lead authors about that, but we can't do that on this platform because there are certain conclusions on this platform, meaning YouTube, that we still don't feel safe saying there.
Yeah, but before we go over there, right?
Yes.
Before we go to that platform, which is Rumble. They are a free speech platform. So we're going to be continuing our stream. We'll continue unabated over on that other platform, which is that right there. We will continue our live stream as normal. But on this platform, on the one that censors you platform, we will not be able to continue here while we talk about this big peer-reviewed study and everything about that. So before we do that, though,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Provia Hair. Are you one of the millions of American men or women of any age dealing with premature hair thinning or loss? Or maybe you're scared about inheriting that thinning look because it just runs in the family? That's why we want to introduce you to Provia, a real solution that delivers on its promise without the harsh side effects, unwanted chemicals, and no need for a prescription. Provia uses safe, natural ingredients from something called Procapil to effectively target the three main causes of premature hair thinning and loss by supporting healthy scalp circulation, the delivery of nourishing nutrients and healthy hair follicles anchoring to your scalp. Provia guarantees more hair on your head than in the shower or on your comb. It's effective for men and women of any age and safe on colored, treated, and styled hair. It's that easy. And right now, new customers can save over 50% plus free shipping on Provia's introductory package by going to proviahair.com/redacted. Every package includes a full 60-day supply of Provia serum for daily use, plus the Provia super concentrate for faster, more noticeable results. And every order includes your choice of free gift right now at checkout. It works or your money back. So don't wait. Order now and save an extra 10% off plus free shipping. Go right now to proviahair.com/redacted.
All right, so we are going to head over now to our friends over on this platform right here, censorship free. Come over, and if you're not subscribed to us there, we stream there simultaneously every day. We'd love for you to subscribe. We now regularly have a lot more viewers watching us there on that free speech platform, so thank you guys. We have 20,000 of you watching us, streaming us over there, so good to see all of you guys. And welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll give you a second to join us here. And while we do wait for you to join us, we should remind you, so goodbye, YouTube. It's been great knowing you tonight. We'll be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube. So we are